Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, coming to you straight from the Upward Sports Podcast Studio. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail where you can, in turn, inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. Well, I am your running host, Dean Thompson. Sign, everywhere a sign. But what do they mean? We're going to answer that question in today's story. And we'll talk about a crisis that we have in this country. No, probably in much of the world. Of course, I'm talking about the comfort crisis. And joining me once again is Run for God founder Mitchell Hollis.
Thanks for having me, Dean. Well, new studio.
I know, right?
Yeah, we still got a few things to do. Got some sound panels that we still need. So if this one sounds a little echoey, it's because we're not quite done with the studio. New mics coming next month. That ought to make things sound a little bit better. So it's exciting times.
My goodness. Yeah. We're spoiled. I'll tell you what. God's been so good to us, hasn't He?
I'm just glad to have my feet on the ground now doing the podcast.
Yeah. We've been sitting
For
up
years,
high.
we've been sitting up real high. You get done and you about fall down when you get off the stool because your legs are numb. Because your legs have been dangling for an hour and a half. So
it almost feels awkward to be sitting down low. Well, I have an official apology I have to administer right here and right now. And that apology goes to Hope Reagan. So last week, I don't know how I did it.
And I was just following your lead, by the way.
Absolutely. Totally 100% my fault. Somehow last week, I had it written down as Reagan Hope. I don't know how I did that. I don't know why I did that. I know her name is Hope Reagan, but once it's written down and it's in front of you, You just repeat what you see, right? And so, Hope, I am so sorry. It is not that I don't know who you are, but I'll tell you what this does. It proves just how bad I am with names. I mean, anyway, it's all good. And I'm sure that Hope will forgive us for our indiscretion.
Sure.
Well, last week we had a post from Linda Null. We all know Linda Null. She's been around Run for God circles for a long time. And she says this: "It's been 3 weeks since my Rooster comb injection in my left knee. This week, I received this beautiful neck gaiter / headband from my friend June Westfall Jennings. I took this as a sign that I needed to give myself a trial run on Mingo National Wildlife Refuge. My doctor told me I would know when the time was right to get moving again. 3 miles later, I am overjoyed that I was able to jog for over half of it. So I don't want to sound like a rooster crowing, but this was just what I needed the first thing this morning." Isn't that awesome?
It is.
It's good to see our run club folks helping each other out too, right? Now you may ask, what is a rooster comb injection? Because that's what I did when I read it. I was like, what in the world is that? So I looked it up, and this is what it says. Osteoarthritis affects more than 30 million adults in the United States and occurs when joint cartilage between bones breaks down or is damaged. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, osteoarthritis is the most common type of arthritis. If you suffer from the condition, you know that osteoarthritis symptoms such as pain, stiffness, and reduced joint function can impact your daily quality of life. A rooster comb injection may be just what you're looking for to help with your symptoms. The rooster comb injection, technically known as hyaluronic acid injection or viscosupplementation, got its name from its early days when the hyaluronic acid was extracted from the cartilage of rooster combs. Today, however, these injections are no longer taken from animals but are synthesized in labs. According to Laff Harris, a doctor of orthopedics, a sports medicine physician with Banner Health, who sees many osteoarthritis patients. So that's what it is. And apparently this helps her to be more comfortable.
So I guess I knew what it was. I just didn't know that name. I think Holly's had a few of these.
Is that right?
It's kind of the shot you hear people of getting that are trying to stay away from knee surgery.
Yeah.
Knee replacement.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of stays it off. But I think once you start getting those, I believe the handwriting's kind of on the wall that you're going to have to get that at some point.
Eventually.
I probably need one of those. You know, you and I we like to tough things out, which is probably not the right thing to do. But yeah.
Well,
but I still don't. What is a rooster comb? Is it part of the rooster? I've never heard rooster comb.
I thought the rooster comb was the thing on its head. Is that not what that is?
Oh, I don't know.
I thought that's what it was. I don't know.
So they took this substance out of the rooster comb
at one time. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. How do you? I mean,
and now we know.
I've always wondered, how do they discover these things?
Hey, I think that rooster's head will help my knees hurting way back sometime.
Makes no sense at all, does it? Well, I remember Linda at the Mississippi River Marathon when I was finishing up the marathon, last couple of miles of the marathon, and I came running and I saw this person who was leaned way, we've seen that, right? People that are leaned way over, and I saw that and I thought, oh, that poor lady, she is suffering. And as I got closer to her, I thought, wait a minute, I know that lady. And that's who it was. But she got through and she was so, it was funny because you could tell, she was in a lot of pain and she just had such a great attitude about it. It's like, I'm just glad I could get to the finish line. And, she's such a great person, a good role model for folks out there. So if you're out there and wondering, here's somebody with osteoarthritis who's 60 something, who, is out there doing, half marathons, and if she can get it done, surely you can get it done.
Another one of those examples of somebody that just takes all your excuses away.
That's right.
Because she does. So what's your excuse?
That's right. Well, our trivia question from last week was a little more interesting, I think. It was define the word carbohydrate. And so I just thought that would be a good thing for us to talk about. What is a carbohydrate? Because we talk about it all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And so I found this from the Mayo Clinic. They do a really good job. Carbohydrates they often get a bad rap, especially when it comes to weight gain. But carbohydrates, often called carbs, aren't all bad. Because of their many health benefits, carbs have a rightful place in the diet. In fact, the body needs carbs to work well. But some carbs can be better for you than others. So here's kind of the whole thing. What are carbohydrates? It's a macronutrient, and it's found obviously in foods and beverages, mostly plant-based foods such as grains. They come in fruits, vegetables, milk, nuts, grains, seeds, beans, peas, and lentils. So all of those things have carbohydrates in them. Now, we hear that, and we think about when we think about carbohydrates, a lot of times we think about bread and we think about candy and things like that, or the sweets. And those weren't the things we were talking about there. Sure. These are the natural occurring ones. So now it comes in three main types. Sugar, that's the simplest form of carbohydrate, and that includes fruit sugar, which is fructose, and table sugar, which is sucrose, and milk sugar, which is lactose. All of those can be found in many different foods, right? And then starch is a complex carbohydrate. That means it's made of many sugar units banded together, and that occurs in a lot of vegetables, grains, and cooked dry beans and peas. And then fiber is a complex carbohydrate also, and it occurs naturally in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and cooked dry beans and peas. You've probably heard talk about the glycemic index as well, right? The glycemic index classifies carbohydrate-containing foods according to their potential to raise blood sugar levels. So that's what it means when it's talking about that glycemic index. Weight loss diets based on the glycemic index typically suggest limiting foods that are higher on the glycemic index. Foods with a relatively high glycemic index ranking include potatoes, white bread, and snack foods and desserts that have refined flours. Many healthy foods are naturally lower on the glycemic index. Examples are like whole grains, legumes, vegetables, fruits, and low-fat dairy products. So how many carbohydrates do you need? What should your diet look like? Well, according to dietary guidelines for Americans, they should make up 45 to 65% of your total daily calories. So if you get in 2,000 calories a day, it should be between 900 and 1,300 calories should be from carbohydrates. And that translates to about 225 to 325 grams of carbohydrates a day. And you can find that on the packages of your food. So despite their bad reputation, carbohydrates are vital for your health for many reasons. They provide energy. Carbohydrates are the main energy that we use to do all the things that we do. During digestion, sugars and starches are broken down into simple sugars, and then they're absorbed into the bloodstream where they're known as blood sugar or blood glucose, as we hear very often. And then they also protect against disease. Some evidence suggests that whole grains and dietary fiber from whole foods helps lower your risk of heart disease and stroke. Fiber may also protect against obesity, colon and rectal cancers, and type 2 diabetes. Fiber is also essential for optimal digestive health. And then, of course, controlling weight. Evidence shows that eating plenty of fruit, vegetables, and whole grains can help you control your weight. Their bulk and fiber content adds weight control by helping you feel full on fewer calories. Despite what proponents of low-carb diets claim, few studies show that a diet rich in healthy carbs leads to weight gain or obesity. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting thing, right?
Yeah, I had a guy, I actually took a course, it's been years ago, and it was on metabolic efficiency. Now, this guy was more on the ketosis bent of keto diet and things like that, but he really explained carbohydrates in a way that even this guy can understand. I need it broken down because everything I was about to, my eyes were rolling back in my head when you were explaining all that, because it's very confusing. But the way he explained it to me is simple carbohydrates are the enemy. Your candy, your highly processed,
your Twinkie.
Yeah, your Twinkies, all your highly processed that's not in the natural form. And the way he explained it is, the reason that you typically associate weight gain with carbohydrates is that simple carbs, when it spikes your blood sugar, that causes insulin to be triggered. And when insulin is triggered, when your body starts to produce insulin, it turns off your fat burning mechanisms. And so that's why if you're just eating simple carbohydrates all day long, and nowadays we have these, I don't even know what they're called. It's the things that people wear on their arms.
Yeah.
And you can see throughout the day. If you're constantly having spikes, because it takes about 2 hours to come off of a spike.
Right.
So when your blood sugar spikes, your fat burning mechanisms turn off, and then it takes 2 hours for that to come back on. Well, if in 2 hours you go grab a snack and that snack is a Twinkie, then it's going to spike again. And so for that reason, your fat burning mechanisms, and that has a more technical term, I call it fat burning mechanism.
Sure.
It just stays turned off. And so people say, well, carbs are bad. Well, that's just not the case. Complex carbohydrates, the glycemic index, and I don't even understand all that, but I know that complex carbohydrates don't spike your blood sugar, and so your fat burning mechanisms stay turned on.
Yeah.
So that was the way it was explained to me years ago, and I've always I just love that explanation because it makes sense.
Yeah.
This causes this, which turns this off. Don't do this, and this won't turn off. And so I don't know.
So there you go.
I'm just not a proponent of cutting anything completely out of your diet.
That's the way
it's all about learning the cause and effect. And if you know the cause and effect, carbohydrates are a great thing.
That's right.
Sure.
Upward Sports equips churches to run self-sustaining sports ministries in their communities. Whether you're a sports fanatic or on staff at a church, Upward Sports will give you all the tools you need to run a first-class sports ministry that allows you to reach families in your community. Upward Sports offers basketball, soccer, flag football, cheerleading, volleyball, baseball, and softball through league and camp offerings. At Upward Sports, we want to help your church make a difference and give you increased opportunities to share the gospel. Learn more today at upward.org. That's upward.org.
So we're back, and Dean, first of all, I wanted to jump out of my chair, and you wanted to get out of your chair and go that way.
Yeah.
Because we're on the ground, but we're also on opposite sides of the table now.
That feels weird. Yeah, it does.
We'll get used to it.
Yes, we will. It's all good. It's the same thing either way, right? All right. Well, we're gonna talk about somebody's story here in just a minute. But let me say this: we're getting low on stories again, and we need some stories to come in. So I know that I've heard from some people that are in Run Club who they tell me their stories, and they're great stories. But I've never seen them in writing.
Yeah.
And I would love to share those stories. So if you're out there and you're one of those, please share your story and do it now. Go ahead and maybe even pause this podcast, write your story and send it in.
Well, again, we're about a month away from the start of the half marathon challenge.
That's right.
I know, and I'm pounding the desk when I say this, I know that there's somebody out there who is intimidated. They have a little bit of fear. They have a little bit of anxiety because maybe this is their first time doing it. We have a lot of people signed up for the half marathon challenge. Any one of you listening who has never done this before, or there's some kind of anxiousness, or we want to hear your story right now. What you're feeling, what you're thinking, what's intimidating, all of those feelings you're having. We want to hear that. Right? Put that down in writing. Put that into a story. And let us go through that on this podcast. And then when you cross that finish line early next year, we want to hear your story again and contrast the two, because it's a stark contrast, not just physically, but it's a different person.
For sure.
We want to contrast those two stories and have that in the Run for God archive, so that when somebody writes in or calls in and says, I just don't think I can do that, we can say, go listen to podcast X and listen to podcast Y.
Yeah.
And you'll see the differences.
Yeah. That would be awesome.
Yeah. But we can't write them for them.
That's right. Somebody has to take it upon themselves to be that person.
Yeah.
And you know who you are because you're listening right now and you're going there.
That's me.
That sounds like me.
I'm signed up for the half. And
yeah.
I'm a little anxious. And
yeah.
That's you.
That's you. Well, I saw a cool question on the Let's Run message board, and it was this: what is your favorite piece of running gear, not including your shoes? And I thought that's an interesting question and something to think about, right? The guy who posted it said that his favorite running item, not including his shoes, was his iPod Shuffle. He still uses his.
They still make those.
They don't. They haven't made them in years. But
So
this
he's got
guy's
a dinosaur.
He still uses it because I guess he doesn't want to carry a big bulky phone. And the iPod Shuffle, as you know, was just this tiny little postage stamp.
I used
thing.
to use one.
Yeah. I mean, they were great. The problem is that there's no Bluetooth in them, so you have to have corded headphones. And I guess if if you're okay with that,
sure, then
this guy is, and that's his thing. And I thought that's pretty cool. So I got to thinking about what my favorite thing would be, and my favorite thing goes back even further than the iPod Shuffle, because my favorite thing is my Gore-Tex mittens, which we've talked about on here before. I got them for Christmas in 1982.
And I didn't even know they made Gore-Tex back then.
Yeah,
I thought Gore-Tex was a fairly late 90s thing.
Gore-Tex was a brand new thing at that time. I
Really?
bet Gore-Tex
Okay.
hadn't been out for a year and a half.
Wow.
At that point. It was new. And I can't find these things anymore. I don't know anybody who makes anything like what I have. I've seen some Gore-Tex mittens that have all the insulation and stuff. Mine don't have any insulation in them. It's just a Gore-Tex, and they're perfect for running, and I love them. So that's my stuff. What about you? You got something? A hat?
I can't run without a hat. Just any hat. Mainly because if you live in the South, especially right around here, and you get down in any kind of trees, there's these, I call them dive bombers. It's horse flies, it's yellow fly. The yellow flies are the worst. You know, they will hunt you down, and they're relentless.
Yeah.
And they love your head. They love the sweat. And so if you're not wearing a hat and you run in the woods in July in North Georgia, you will start wearing a hat after that.
I frequently pick up a fly, where Red Clay State Park is.
Yeah.
And, there's that one stretch of road there where there's trees on both sides close to the road, running right through there. I pick one up,
And they'll follow you the whole way.
They will.
Well, they'll go wherever you
Miles.
go. Yeah.
Yep. And it doesn't matter how many times you swat at them.
And it's, that somebody somewhere is watching you because you look like you're having some kind of seizure.
That's right.
Because they hurt. And so you're just swatting and flailing on the road, and people are thinking, there goes that crazy guy again.
Yeah. That guy does that every time he goes by here. I also love my Shocks headphones. Those are pretty cool because I can listen to other stuff while I'm also listening to a podcast or whatever it is that I'm listening to. Although when I have them on, of course I have to carry my phone with me, and I wear shorts now where I can do that. And my father called me a couple of weeks ago, and I think he felt like he was bothering me. I'm like, no, it's fine. I was in the middle of a 25-mile run. Yeah. I'm like, it's fine. And you could tell the more we talked, the more uncomfortable he was with hearing me breathing while he was. And he finally hung up.
It's not a normal thing, Dean.
That's not a normal thing to run. Yeah. And I remember a pair of shoes I had years ago. They were made by Nike. I can't remember the name of them. Matter of fact, I just saw it this past weekend, and now it's gone out of my head again. But these shoes were only meant to be used for 100 kilometers. And they were like super light, and I really loved those shoes. But mine literally fell apart. Like literally fell apart. That's. I mean, I don't know how many miles I had on them. I never measured, but they fell apart. So, yeah.
They've got some shoe out now that is only good for like a marathon, don't they? Isn't there a shoe out now?
Yeah, that Adidas shoe. And it's $500 too.
Yeah, that's crazy.
On top of that, yeah. Well, there were a lot of different answers to this question. One person said Body Glide. The funniest answer was somebody said, my Glock 43. So that'd be a little uncomfortable to carry while you're running, though.
I know that. I mean, they make a harness.
Yeah.
That it's kind of an elastic tight. I mean, I've never put one on, but it looks. I have a friend that uses that, and it appears. I mean, you don't feel it. It's not bad. It's kind of like you wear the tight shorts for your phone.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same principle, but they make a harness for those, and depending on where you're running.
Yeah.
I guess my answer to that is don't run there.
Yeah.
If you feel like you need a Glock, I wouldn't be running there.
Good point. Well, how about a Team Coolidge story? This one comes from Sharon Stiner, and it's called Signs. Signs, everywhere are signs. I assume everyone has the song going through their head right now. You're welcome. This story is about signs and may not even be run related, other than the fact that I could have lost the ability to run or live for that matter. Here's the story. I was going home from work last night. The time was 6 to 6:30 and about 2 miles from my home. Most insurance people know that most accidents occur approximately 2 to 2.5 miles distance from your home or your destination. And saw a car approaching me as he or she crested the hill. The car then proceeded to get in my lane and never deferred. I had to get completely off the road, go through a driveway, straddle a small ditch, and kiss some bushes on the side of my vehicle. The car still came within an inch or two of hitting the side of my vehicle. When I got home, I checked the side because I still don't know how they managed not to hit me in some way, or maybe I do. Signs. The first words out of my mouth were, "You fool!" Who even uses that word anymore? Second words were, "Thank you, Lord." I was listening to a Christian station, so I'm sure a praise song was playing. The next words were, "Okay, Lord, I get it." Signs. We may not notice, or we may choose not to notice signs, but be they traffic signs, speed limit signs, political signs, health signs, and signs from God. Who hasn't said, if you want me to do this or that, send me a sign? And we still do what we intended to do anyway, didn't we? Recently, I was listening to a podcast, and he mentioned Gideon, who had kept asking and asking for signs. Don't we all do that? It reminded me of the Run for God Bible in a Year when Dean was reading about Moses coming from the tent after meeting with God, and his face was shining so bright. The people couldn't look at him, and he covered his face. One part of my brain was saying, "Oh, the majesty of God." The other part, the one the devil kept prodding, was saying, Could that have been some kind of radiation like the Romans or Greeks thinking when the volcano erupted or blew smoke, it was the god Vulcan voicing displeasure of the people? We let science put doubt in our minds. Was I subconsciously asking for a sign? Did God answer in a big way? He sure did. Psalms 50:15. You can let doubt, fear, and worry overtake you, or you can call upon the Lord. God has promised that if you call upon Him, He will deliver you. And He did. Praise God, He did. I don't get rattled much unless one of my kids gets hurt, but I truly felt my life was about to end or be drastically altered. In other words, it would have hurt. Back to signs. Are there signs guiding us to our purpose? Josh mentions that several times during our challenges, as also does our teacher and pastor. Several times during our runs, we are noticed by the community and will be asked about it during the week, sometimes at stores, restaurants, and work. Do we just acknowledge, yes, that is us, or do we do what God calls upon us to do? Testify, spread His word, invite them to share our wonderful relationship with God. God gives all of us a little shake sometimes to allow us to appreciate our blessings, signs. The question is, what do we do after? I will joke with the group sometimes when we talk about purpose, since I am one of the older ones of the group and have one knee replaced and the other knocking on the door, and I'm slow as a turtle going through peanut butter, that my purpose is to make them feel better because at least they will beat me. What is my purpose? We were discussing God's lessons at the end of the race in Mississippi when our team member had an injury after working so hard the last few months in preparation for it. Signs. Angie had mentioned that the lesson may be for us or maybe for someone watching us. Sometimes we're doing God's purpose and don't realize it. Psalms 57:2 says, I cry out to God Most High, to God who fulfills His purpose for me. Let us pray while we are running, fulfilling our daily tasks, talking to others, that we strive to find our purpose while shining our light.
It's a great story, Sharon.
That's an interesting thought. Sometimes we see these signs and we don't, or we think we see signs, and we're always trying to figure it out, right? We're trying to interpret. Is this a sign? Is it not a sign? I think we usually fall into one category, one of two categories. We either never see any sign in anything because everything's all coincidence, or we see a sign in everything, like, the way the spaghetti's laying on my plate. and that's probably a little too far, right? So the question is, how do we figure out when it is a sign for us, right?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that she mentioned science, and these aren't really signs, but sometimes I put this in the category of the hand of God. I'll never forget when my stepdad, he had cancer surgery years and years ago, and they went in to take out some cancer, and they opened him up and they closed him right back and said, he is eat up with cancer. There's nothing we could do. Go home and get your affairs in order. And he lived for years.
Wow.
After that. And our tendency is to say, well, they just got it wrong.
Yeah.
No, they probably didn't. But God had different plans. And we do that so quickly. We question science, or we use science as a justification, or it's a coincidence, or, that there's God's putting things in our path all around us all the time. But too many times we explain them away.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this past week, I was listening to a podcast that had Lee Strobel on there, and he was talking about the actual scientific evidence for God.
Sure.
I think what we do is we allow other people to control a narrative.
Yeah.
And the truth is that when you really look at science proves God.
Sure. Science
doesn't disprove God. So I would invite you to check that out with, whether it's Lee Strobel or
J. Warner Wallace.
Yes.
Yeah.
because there's way more evidence for God than you think there is, probably, if you have that kind of a thought. Psalms 50:15 says, "Call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me."
We talked about this, was it last week or the week before last, how so many times something happens in our day and we get frustrated, and that frustration builds into something else, which builds into something else, which builds, and before you know it, our whole day is ruined. And I talked about how I don't understand how people who don't have a relationship with Christ do it, because this verse is spot on. Call on me in the day of the trouble, and I will deliver you. That's a pretty poignant promise. And, we just moved this past weekend. And there was a few times where I called upon God because, moving's hard. Holly and I talked about it last night. We made it. We made it through a move, and we didn't kill each other. But it's true. But the crazy thing is that when you need to call on him the most, that's when the devil is at his. That's when he's working the hardest.
It's true.
And so it's this, I go back to Tom and Jerry, where you've got God sitting on one shoulder and you got the devil sitting on the other shoulder. That is such a true. It's so elementary, but that is so true. But if we can learn that our default is to turn to God, He will take that. He will take that frustration from you. You've lost your cool. Your patience are wearing thin. God will give you patience.
Yeah.
But our tendency is to turn toward that little devil on our left shoulder. And things just go off the rails. And we know this.
Yeah.
But yet we do it still.
Yeah, we do. And the world, I look at where we are right now, kind of in our country where we are right now. And there's so much, I look back at the Israelites and all those times they turned away from God. It was just a matter of turning back to Him. When there's trouble. Well, we have trouble right now. We should be turning back, and we're not doing it. And I always wondered when I look back at the Israelites, how many people there were there who had some sense and were saying we need to turn back to God. We see that today, right? We see, we're like, we need to turn back to God, and there's so many people not doing that.
Well, think back in our just recent history. Think about the times when we were the most united as a society. After 9/11 just sticks out in my head. Why? Because this nation, for the most part, turned to God. We were kind of forced to. And people set their differences aside for a common goal, narrative.
And that's where it comes down to.
And that was, all of a sudden you started seeing people asking for prayer on the TV, on the networks. No longer was we can't say that. It was, we need it now.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of alluded to this before, but our default when things get bad is to turn to God. Well, it makes you wonder, if we turn to God daily, would we have to go through those bad times? Because many times God brings us through the valleys to get our attention, to turn us back to Him.
It's true.
So,
Psalm 57:2 says, "I will cry out to God Most High, to God who performs all things for me." Man, again, crying out to God. It's the same theme, right? And when we're in God's will, when we're doing the things, it says here, the version that I read, I think said, instead of said the God who performs all things, mine said, to God who fulfills His purpose for me. I kind of like that translation better. And this is David, he's talking about this. This is when he's running away from Saul. He's in the cave, and he's crying out to God because he's in a tight spot. And but he's in God's will. He's doing what God wants him to do, even though things aren't good for him in that moment. And that's where we have to be. And God says he'll take care. And God did. God took care of David, even at a point where it looked like it would be easy. It would have been easy for David to have looked around and gone, where is God? Mm-hmm. But he didn't. He realized God was there, even though his circumstances weren't great. And back to your point about calling on God daily, if we'll do that despite our circumstances, I think we'll all be better off, and we'll find him fulfilling the purpose for our lives even more deeply that way.
And I don't want to run the risk of sounding like this is some type of prosperity gospel.
Yeah,
that's not what I'm saying. We're going to go through bad times, but if we're tempered to turn to God, then when we go through those bad times, because they're going to come. I'm not saying this is a cause and effect. I'm not saying if we turn to God, we'll never go through bad things again. That's not true. In fact, that's wrong.
Well, David was a good example of that.
Right.
Like a guy after God's own heart. Right?
But if our default is to turn to God, it will make getting through those hard times easier.
Yes.
Because if our default is to turn to the world or to turn to a drug or turn to a bottle, it's going to be a very rough road.
Yep.
But just like Paul was always in hot water, but his default was to turn to God. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, he can sing praises while in shackles in a prison.
Yep.
Where most people would be saying, woe is me, why me, God? And for that, yeah. I mean, he was able to have a different narrative than most of us would in the same situation.
Yep. It doesn't guarantee our lives aren't going to be smooth.
No.
But God will make our lives smoother.
Sure.
Yep. Matthew 16:4 says, a wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and no sign shall be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. And he left them and departed. I wanted to bring this up because I thought we should talk about the other side of signs. Because, the Pharisees in the New Testament were constantly asking Jesus for a sign, when in reality, Jesus was showing them sign after sign. Mm-hmm. And then they kept saying, well, show us a sign. And it's like, he knew that he could show them a sign, and they still weren't going to believe because he had already done it. And so we have to make sure that when we're asking for a sign, that our motives are pure, right? That we're not asking for Jesus to prove who he is. Mm-hmm. The sign that we're looking for is a whole different thing, right? And that's where we need to be. She mentions in the story, we've all gone to that point where we say, God, if you'll do this, mm-hmm. then I'll do this, mm-hmm. right? And
kind of giving them an ultimatum.
Yeah, and that's just not what God's looking for from us. Question: do we ignore signs from God?
I don't know, and I'm going to tell this. I don't know what it's called, a little story. I feel like everybody's probably heard it, but it's so relative right now. You probably know what I'm about to say. But it was about the guy who was on his roof in a flood.
Yeah.
And I want to tell it because I think there's probably people who don't know this story, but it was a guy that was on his roof mm-hmm. in a flood, and the waters were rising, and a boat came and pulled up to the house and said, hey, buddy, come down, get in the boat. He said, nope. He said, I'm praying my God is going to save me. Mm-hmm. So the boat leaves. And then this second boat comes up, and the guy says, hey, buddy, come down off the roof, get in the boat. Water's getting high. And he said, no, it was at the eaves of the house at this point. He said, nope, my God's going to save me. Well, the water's right up to the ridge line of the house, and he's barely got any room to sit, and a helicopter comes. They drop down this rope, and he said, nope, don't worry about it. My God is going to save me. And then the guy dies. He gets to heaven. He goes up to God, and he says, God, I put all of my faith in you. Why didn't you save me? And God said, I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. What more do you want? But that's what we do so many times. Yep. There's something right in front of us that God has put there, but it's not what we think it should be.
Yep.
And so therefore we turn it away, and it costs us. And this whole story and these questions just make me think of that story. Most people have probably heard that, but some haven't. But that's how we do so many times. It sounds ridiculous, but we do it all the time.
We do it. We all do it. Yep. The whole idea of ignoring signs from God, I would say, rather than we ignore. Now, some people do ignore signs from God, but I think a lot of times we just miss signs from God, right?
Sure.
And I'm reading a book right now. It's called Woke Jesus, and it's about how the churches have turned towards things that are not biblical, and that's those churches. There are signs, and they're missing them. I don't think they're purposefully ignoring them. I mean, I think a lot of those people, they have the right heart. They want to do the right thing, and they think they're doing the right thing, but they're completely missing the signs that God's telling them or showing them.
Right. But what's convicting is we like to point our finger at them.
Yeah.
But how many times, and a lot of times, the dangerous part is we know it's a sign.
Yeah.
And we ignore it anyway.
Yes.
And it's because that's going to be too hard. That's going to cost me. And we turn the other way. And that's just as bad as the churches that you're reading about in that book.
100%.
And yet we do it.
100%.
That's scary.
Yep. Yeah. And in those cases, we are ignoring the signs because we saw it.
We know it.
And we know it, but we don't want to do that thing because that thing is hard.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good point. Another question. What is our purpose? That one's pretty wide open. What is our purpose? I think our purpose is different for everybody. In general, I think God just wants us to recognize who He is and act accordingly. A lot of that comes through learning about Him because of signs, the signs that He shows us. And Lee Strobel in that podcast was a sign. It was hey, look, let me point out all of these things that God has put in place and why science proves that God is who He says He is. And, and so I think generally that's the way it is, but individually we all have a different purpose, right?
Yeah. I think we all have one purpose. We go about fulfilling that purpose in different ways.
That's a good way to
the
put
one
it.
purpose is fulfilling the Great Commission. The Great Commission.
That's right.
But we all do that in different ways. And where we get off the rails sometimes is we get into the arguments of, well, your way of doing it's not the way I would do it, so it's wrong. And that's where we go off the rails sometimes. But we all have to understand that fulfilling that purpose comes in thousands of many different forms.
Well, look at us.
Sure.
We're doing it through running.
Yeah.
What could be less significant in the world than running, yeah. Right? But really, it's not a hugely significant thing. But man, it what we're doing can be consequential and is consequential many times.
It's our prayer.
Last question. Why do we ask for signs? Now, I added this question. She only had 2 questions, so I added this one. But I thought this would be a good question. Why do we ask for signs? Yeah, I think
it's about a wide open question.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's more profound than it appears on the surface.
Sure.
We talked about the Pharisees and how they asked for signs, and it was for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think God wants us to ask for signs, but He wants us to ask for signs for we're going through an illness, and we want to feel God close to us. That's a sign. That's a good sign, and He wants us to feel that, and I think He wants us to ask for that sign. That's a different sign than, hey, God, prove to me you are who you said you are, And so I think God reveals Himself to us in great ways that comfort us. Upward Sports Run for God Run Club is the best way to stay motivated for your fitness journey and your faith journey. You get these weekly podcasts, but there is so much more. We have proven training plans available for you, whether you're just at the beginning of your fitness quest or you've been running for 20 years. We have something for everyone, and It doesn't matter where you are with God either. We have something for you there too. If you're not a member, join today at runforgod.com. It is the best value you will find. All right, we're back, and I found this story. It comes from Runner's World, and it says this: man breaks world record for fastest barefoot half marathon run on ice. That is not something you think about very often. But a guy named Joseph Salek, I don't know if I'm saying that right, of Czechia, I guess that's Czechoslovakia now, is known as Czechia, ran 1:50.42 in freezing temperatures wearing nothing but a pair of shorts. And I saw the pictures. He's wearing nothing but
we talk
shorts.
about hard surfaces, but there's really not much harder than ice.
Well, this ice was it was as much snow as it was ice.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't quite.
I was thinking, I had a
ice.
picture of an ice lake in my head.
I did too when I read but it was a little bit different than that. But I mean, here's a guy, he's running bare feet, basically in hard packed snow.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it that way. And it doesn't sound comfortable.
Of course, I mean, our old neighbors, still great friends, the Stampers. I always said that, their kids, they'd be out in 20 degrees in shorts and no shoes. And so some people are built for that, I think.
Yeah, they are.
Not me.
Well, Joseph Salek is the proud new Guinness World Record holder of the fastest half marathon completed barefoot on ice or snow, a feat he accomplished in 1:50.42, clad in nothing but a pair of short tights and an ecstatic grin. The Czech therapist, lecturer, and personal development coach bested the previous record of 2:16.34 set by Dutch runner Wim the Iceman Hof in 2007. It's not his first world record either. In 2023, the fitness enthusiast proved his extreme abdominal strength by holding a plank for 9 hours, 38 minutes, and 47 seconds, besting the previous record by more than 8 minutes.
I do remember this guy.
The new record for the fastest barefoot half marathon on ice was set on an open circuit in a valley near the highest mountain in Czechia, previously referred to as the Czech Republic, measured by a professional surveyor. Technically, Salek's preparation for the record began back in 2013 before he even became a runner. He started hosting workshops where he would walk barefoot over hot coals and glass shards. I needed to show people how to manage their fears and lack of self-confidence in practice, he wrote on his website. Then, in 2017, after going through a breakup and struggling with unhealthy eating and alcohol and cigarette use, he decided to try running. It provided a distraction from his heartbreak. My communication with my body developed strongly, he wrote, and after only a few months, I had the need to run barefoot and half body. Since then, I regularly run several tens of kilometers or marathons year-round barefoot.
Now, what is half body?
I don't know what that means. In the 2 weeks leading up to his official record attempt, Salek submerged his feet in a tub of ice every day. The night before, the course froze over and it appeared that it wouldn't be possible for Salek to run that day after all. But after volunteers raked the ground, the athlete was able to embark on his mission to embrace the pain cave. On the course, Salek zigzagged and adapted his running pattern to keep from slipping on the ice. It was by no means easy. Picture running an 8:27 per mile average pace over sharp, slick ice whilst barefoot and scantily clad. But thanks to his training and mental fortitude, Salek conquered his goal and made it to the finish line with a broad smile on his face. The Guinness World Records official adjudicator, Pravin Patel, was on site to announce Salek's successful attempt and to hand him his certificate. After his abdominal plank world record, Salek told an interviewer, "I knew that in my case, it's not about demanding physical training, but rather about mastering the process, about my mindset." One of the mental techniques he practiced was acceptance. He embraced the difficulty of the exercise. Making peace with the physical discomfort probably went a long way in helping him towards his new superlative on the ice as well.
I wouldn't say probably went a long way.
Yeah, no question,
Definitely went a long way, yeah.
Yeah, can you imagine those numb feet? I mean, they had to just be completely numb. You couldn't,
For sure,
You couldn't even feel the ground, I would imagine. You ever put your foot in ice?
Yeah.
That hurts.
Yeah.
My goodness. But
I mean, putting your feet in, I think, is worse than an ice bath.
Yeah.
Because at least your whole body is kind of throbbing, but when you put your foot, it's very acute.
Yes.
And it hurts, yeah. Like if you have a sprained ankle or something, you put it down in ice water.
Well, typically that's colder too than an ice bath would be.
Sure.
But
yeah, because you got a lot more ice in a concentrated area.
Yeah. But still, it hurts. The other interesting thing about this is this guy had some problems with, drinking and smoking and some other things. And how many times have we heard that story where an alcoholic or somebody kicked the smoking habit and they found running and running was a good substitute for it.
Yeah.
We've heard that story over and over again.
Lot, yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. And pushing your mind to places that are really difficult. It's a great thing to do for all of us. That's what our challenges are all about, right? This guy ran a half marathon on ice barefoot, but for a lot of people, running that 5K is every bit as challenging for them as this was for him. And it's something, no matter what your challenge is, everybody should challenge themselves, right? I mean, I'm going to do a 100-miler. That's my challenge. After all these years of running, it's hard to find things to challenge yourself, but I try to do new things regularly, and I think it's good. So here's a way to do it. If you need a way to challenge yourself, ask yourself, what scares me? And that'll give you a good direction to go in.
You've said this quote on here before, but somebody said, do something that scares you at least once a day. Who was it? Was it
Roosevelt?
Eleanor
I think it was Eleanor
Roosevelt.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, we should be doing those things that challenges us, and before long, the thing that challenges you doesn't challenge you anymore.
That's right.
It's kind of like, I know the brain is not a muscle, but it's almost like the brain is a muscle, and you can work that out and become better at doing those things.
100%.
Which kind of leads into your story.
Yeah. And it's time for Dean's Thoughts. That's a time when I share something I've written about the intersection between running and faith. And again, this kind of goes along with all that. This one is called Comfort Crisis. I was born at a time when things were different. It would take a fortnight to list all the things that have changed, so I won't go over many of them, but let's take a couple of simple examples. I remember having to get up out of my seat to change the channel on the television. There was no such thing as a remote control for our enormous 27-inch televisions. It's a simple thing, but when you multiply that one issue times 1,000 other things that are much easier today, it has a substantial impact on the amount of activity we employ today versus 40 years ago. It has impacted our fitness, I'd say. At that same time, I also remember having to go to the library to do research. I write a Dean's Thought story every week, and I never have to leave my chair because all the information we need is at our fingertips or can even be accessed by just speaking words. We should be smarter than ever as a society, but we're not. For the first time in history, the average IQ of a person has decreased over the past decade or so. It seems that the close access to all the information at any moment in time has decreased our desire to learn new things. After all, if I can find the answer to any question in 20 seconds, why should I retain any information? So what gives? Why are we headed in a direction of poorer general fitness and becoming less educated? It may surprise you that I have a hypothesis. I think we are in a comfort crisis. What an oxymoronic phrase, right? Comfort crisis. Comfort is a good thing, isn't it? We've worked hard for thousands of years to get to a place where we can tap on our phones a few times and dinner shows up at the door. After all that work, is it now a crisis? Well, I think it is anyway. Here's the crux of the problem. There was a time when one of the most desired attribute was the appreciation of achieving hard things. But today, We lean toward the exact opposite. We love the things that make our lives easier more than we love those achievements. Nobody did it on purpose. We're just naturally inclined toward comfort. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we should still be more impressed with the friend who finished a marathon than the friend who just purchased a robot to clean her floors. The good news is that there is a simple fix. Do hard things and learn about them at the same time. Run that 5K you don't think you can run and learn about the term VO2 max. Finish that marathon that even your friends think you can't do and get acquainted with the dreaded wall. Find something hard, something worthwhile, learn about it and do it. And when you see or hear about someone else doing a hard thing, take notice, cheer them on, let them know it inspired you. Maybe we can change this underappreciation for accomplishing hard things. We're even willing to do our part to help you get there if you're willing to embrace the struggle. You have to be willing to exchange a little comfort for a little discomfort. We've heard a few stories over the years where people compare their running struggles with the pain of Jesus going to the cross. Of course, the comparison is absurd, as it is meant to be in those stories. Our sacrifice and discomfort to accomplish any goal will never be as difficult as what our Savior did for us on the cross. He willingly accepted a journey he did not want. He prayed in the garden, "Take this from me." He did not want to suffer and go to the cross, but he continued in his prayer, "Nevertheless, your will be done." God had a hard job for him, and he did it. And we have salvation because of that decision, that attitude, and ultimately the carrying through with the hardest thing anyone has ever done. Comfort is a good thing. I like being comfortable. Being able to use Google is not bad, but we need to yearn for a deeper learning too. The truth is that deeper satisfaction comes from accomplishment and from real knowledge. There is no accomplishment in comfort and complacency. You must go against the grain. The world embraces easier, but there is much more value in bucking that trend. Beat the comfort crisis by fully embracing something hard today.
It's a great story, Dean. So true.
We sound like a broken record, I guess.
We do.
Do hard things. We do it all the time.
Yeah, even the easy things are viewed as hard nowadays. While you were reading this, I was thinking about we have some friends, and I was watching one of their children here a while back. We were at their house, and their child was watching on YouTube somebody play video games. And so instead of playing the video game, they were watching somebody play the video game. And I don't know why that struck me, as it's exactly what you're talking about here. We're even the easier things we want to make easier. We want to reduce friction at all costs. And marketers know this. I mean, Amazon, good gravy. You can look at your phone now, not even touch it, and the stuff arrives at your doorstep. And when we create less friction, it causes more problems.
Yeah.
Because things are too easy. And when things get too easy, we get complacent, we get lazy, and we do things that just don't make sense. We need to start putting more friction back in our lives. I still look at social media every now and then, but I don't have it on my phone because I started to see what it did in my life. It started creating the death scroll problems and I thank God that I recognized that and I did something to stop that. But man, society's got us programmed now to where that is friction is a bad thing. Friction is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and I guess my point here too is that it's the things we choose. Like when it comes to work, for a lot of people don't have a problem doing hard things for work because it's something they have to do. Sure. Right? So the things we have to do, we know we can do those things that aren't necessarily easy to do. It's the things that we choose to do. Mm-hmm. We're choosing the things we choose. We're choosing easy over hard, and sometimes it's okay to do that a lot. but we need to occasionally choose the hard things over the easy things. I think that's where it comes down to. What do you think about this IQ thing? I mean, the whole idea that our IQ is dropping because we have information at our fingertips.
Well,
Isn't that crazy?
and now with the introduction of AI, I was talking to somebody in marketing the other day, and I was like, man, that sounds good. And they're like, oh, that was AI generated. I'm like, so you have I didn't say this, but this is what I was thinking. You have a marketing degree and you did all this work to become proficient in making things sound good. And now it's like we're throwing all that out the window.
Yeah.
And, the iPhone has kind of done away with the need for a lot of things.
Yeah.
But one of them being the need to know math. I mean, everybody's carrying around a calculator in their pocket now. Well, now AI is doing away with entire industries.
Yeah.
Like marketing, for example. I'm not saying AI is going to replace marketing, but it's headed there pretty quick. Just like the iPhone did away with a lot of industries. I don't need to start chasing the AI rabbit trail, but it's true.
It makes me think about, I write the Dean's Thoughts every week, right? A story a week. And I could go to an AI generator and say, this is the concept I want.
You did it once.
I did it once.
We read one on here.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it was scary good.
It was.
But that's not good
for me,
for you,
right,
or this ministry, or because my thing, you've probably heard me say this to the kids. When I see kids on their phones, I'll walk up and I'll say, it's rotting your brain.
Yeah.
And it was a joke 15 years ago, but now it's not a joke anymore because science is, the studies are showing that this is not good, that we're not engaging our brains anymore. We're just in a dumb death scroll and Google do this or AI do this, or it's the pictures that you see of ancient times where kings, they have people do everything for them, and the king turns into a dumb, fat, lazy person.
Yeah.
And it's because they don't have to do anything. Well, we're kind of recreating that in a different way now.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that picture.
Yeah.
What do you think would happen? Think about today, people can't do easy things. Just things that you and I grew up that you just do, right? Like changing the oil in my vehicle. Mm-hmm. I don't change the oil in my vehicle anymore, but I did it for years and I know how to change oil. I know how to change a tire. I know how to do a lot of things. Well, a lot of kids today, they're growing up and they're not learning those things. Yeah. And if this world ever turns into a Mad Max situation, we're going to have some problems.
Yeah. And you and I both have a little prepper in us, but the checkbook, when both my kids are so much, Landon is still using a checkbook because Lane's like, I got him his first checking account and he's like, well, where's the app? I'm like, no. You're getting a checkbook. You're going to learn how to enter deposits, enter debits. You're going to learn. And we have every few months, I'll say, break out the checkbook. We're going to see how close your balance is to what you're thinking. And it never fails. This shows you the difference in my two kids. I don't know if I've told you this.
No.
But the first time I did this with Lane, he'll kill me for saying this. I'm like, how much money do you have in your account? He sat down at my desk. I said, how much money do you have in your account? I don't know the exact numbers, but it was like $475. I'm like, nope, you got $38 in there.
Oh.
And it's because he didn't write all these things down. Landon, we did this. I said, how much money you got in your account? And he's like, $38. I'm like, nope, you got $438. Landon, it was the two personalities there. But Landon was not putting deposits in.
Yeah.
Which most people, they're Johnny on the spot on putting.
Yeah.
But it's an example of, I'm kind of old school. A lot of people listening will say I'm old school, but I see the value in learning how, yes, you can look at an app and see your balance.
Understand it better.
Right. It's like every year when I do my taxes, I have an accountant that does my taxes, but I print off the tax forms and I do it myself. Now I have my accountant do it because I I believe in, for me, I need an accountant, but I want to see how close I get, because now, and for years I didn't do this, but now when he starts talking about this deduction or that thing, I have a frame of reference to understand it.
That's right.
And what we're doing today is we don't have that. We don't understand. I've heard stories about people going to restaurants and people handing a teenager cash, and they can't figure out how the register is saying, give them $2.78, and they have problems figuring out what 78 cents is. How do you make that up? And
it's true.
That sounds so crazy, but it's actually happening.
It is.
And so, and it's because we're not doing hard things.
Yeah. And there's value in doing all those little things.
Sure.
And trying new things too.
Yeah.
You know what I tried this week?
What'd you try?
Have you ever had a grilled pimento cheese sandwich?
No, but it sounds good.
It's really good. I had one this week. I thought, I told Debbie, I said, let's have some grilled cheese. And she said, why don't we try that pimento cheese? I'm like, hey, awesome. Let's do it. It was good. It was good. At Upward Sports and Run for God, we're all about helping you on your fitness journey. But we also want to support you on your faith journey as well. Sign up today for the self-paced Bible in a Year Challenge and listen every day as I read through the entire Bible in 365 episodes. As a bonus, I also give you running and walking tips of the day and finish with a different encouraging quote in each episode. You must be a Run Club member to participate in this exciting and edifying challenge. Sign up and start listening today. Every week, I share a reason why running and or walking is so awesome. And this, I'm going to keep with the theme. It's a great way to challenge yourself. I've been running for a long time, and there's still new ways. I mean, just this year, I've done a few things I've never done before. This year, I ran 10 of the first 11 weeks of this year, I ran over 70 miles. I've never done that before. I'm going to run a 100-mile race in May. I've never done that before. There's always something new to challenge yourself with in running. And, for a lot of you out there, it's not going to be a 100-miler, but maybe it's a half marathon or it's a marathon, but it's something to challenge yourself. Right. And that's what's great about it. And it challenges you both physically and mentally. And I think back to what we were just talking about, I think that running helps us think in a little bit different way, and it kind of helps keep us young, and that challenge is good for us. Well, this past week was the Barkley Marathons. And you probably think I'm saying that wrong when I say Barkley Marathons, but that's the way it's pronounced. It started at 5:17 a.m. on a Wednesday. Why 5:17 a.m. on a Wednesday? Well, because Laz, the Gary Cantrell, a.k.a. Lazarus Lake, he blew the conch shell at 4:17. So you have this window of time when this race is going to start. It's like midnight to 8 a.m. or something like that. And sometime in between there, Laz goes out and he blows this conch shell while everybody's sleeping in their tents. And you have 1 hour from when he blows it to start time. And it's a fascinating way to start a race, I think. But if you don't know about the Barkley Marathons, this is the way it works. It is an ultra endurance adventure kind of race. It's a little bit different than just a regular, like a trail race. Apparently the race was inspired by the prison escape of James Earl Ray. It was, he was the guy who killed Dr. Martin Luther King, which is kind of weird. But it has a 60-hour time limit. There's 5 loops. And they say it's about 120 miles. We're not sure how long it is. But do you know what the elevation change is in this race? It's
crazy. Yeah.
It's take climbing Mount Everest twice.
Yeah.
And then some. I mean, it's crazy. And the loops change a little bit every year, so he keeps it kind of fresh. The way that you prove that you actually ran the loop also is that there are books out on the course, and you have to tear the correct page out of a book and keep it with you, and prove at the end of that loop that you ran that loop. But
the other thing about it is we say loop, but it's everybody's path is a little different. Because there's no marked trail.
Yeah, it's not a marked trail.
It's you got to get to that book, into that book, into that, and that creates a loop. And that therefore everybody's not running the same distance. It depends on which way you go.
Yeah. Because
there is no marked trail. And the other funny thing, I've seen the documentary. I think you've seen it too, Danny.
Yeah.
He has one map. He doesn't hand out maps.
Yeah.
There's one map.
Yep.
You can look at it and make your own map, but he has one map.
Yep. That's true.
And the other thing is, what signifies the race starting is he lights a cigarette.
Yeah. I was at a race back years and years ago when I was young. Laz has to be really old.
Yeah.
And I was at a race that he started, and he ran the race. It was a 40.6 mile race, and he was smoking a cigarette when he said go. And then he throws the cigarette down on the ground, stomps it out, and then gets behind the line and starts the race.
Yeah.
Strangest thing. Yeah. Well, this race is 24 years old. I think it's 24 years old. Only 17 people have ever finished it. Mm-hmm. And it looks like we had at least two new people this year. One guy's a guy from Canada who is the winner this year. And then there was, for the first time ever, a woman finished the race this year. That's the first time a woman's ever finished the Barclays Marathons. So that's pretty cool. That's notable. I love it. The way you get into this race, there's only 40 people who start this race each year. Now, I say only, there's only been 17 that have ever finished it, and 40 people started every year. So for over 20 years, 40 people have started this race, and 17 different people have finished it. Now, some people have finished it multiple times. There were a couple of guys this year that finished it for
So theoretically, it's 17 out of 880.
Yeah.
Not good odds.
Yeah. No. So anyway, it's a cool thing. I would love to go up there and watch it someday.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that far from us.
Yeah.
So it's in Tennessee. Well, how about a trivia question for this week? The trivia question's simple this time. Give me one way to calculate your max heart rate. There's several ways to do it. And you just need to send me one of them. Mm-hmm. You can send me the most simple one if you'd like. And if you're the first one to send that to dean@runforgod.com, then you are going to win $20 off in the Run for God store. If you're a member, you have to be a member to win the $20 off. So get on it, dean@runforgod.com. And we'll leave you with this motivational thought of the week. It comes from Jim Rohn. He said, if you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse.
I love that quote.
That goes back to that hard thing, right? We'll find a way to do hard things if we want to. If we don't want to, we'll find reasons why we don't need to do it. So you just got to find that want to button. That's what I always say. Find the want to button and just sign up and go. Get it done. All right. 210 episodes is as crazy as anything that I know. And until next week, may God bless every step of every run and or walk. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.
For more information about the Run for God ministry, go to runforgod.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There's nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.